Nothing can prepare you for being a doctor. Nothing. Except for this video. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Sarah. I'm a junior doctor working near London, and it's now been about 10 months that I've worked as a junior doctor. Over the last year, I have learned a lot about being a doctor, about medicine, about patients, and most of all about myself. But that's personal, so I won't be discussing that today. What I am going to be talking about are 3 points that I wish I knew before I started working as a junior doctor. Some of them I maybe knew but accepted way too late. Others I had no idea about, and this video will serve its purpose if it highlights these points to you so that you can realize them and accept them sooner rather than later, because I think it will put you in very good stead as a junior doctor and will make the journey a lot easier. Let's get started. Right, so I split this video into 3 major points. There's a lot more that I can talk about, but I think this is the most important, and it's what I've taken away as the key things that will put you in good stead. Point number 1 is know what is expected of you as a junior doctor. This might seem like the most obvious point, but it is not. As an F1, you are a junior doctor. You are not the medical registrar, you are not the consultant. In a medical team, there is typically an F1, so the most junior of all doctors, and then you'll have a senior house officer, so SHO, and that can be either an F2 or it can be a doctor that's got a couple of years of experience but is not yet a registrar, which is the next step. And then finally you have the consultant, who is the boss of the team, I suppose, and is the one who's responsible for the whole team and all the patients that the team looks after. When you start working as a junior doctor, everyone knows that you're the most junior member of the team. A lot of the time, the nurses will know much more than you, because some nurses have been working in the hospital for 30 plus years. They're very experienced, they've learned from the doctors, they've learned from their own jobs, and they will advise and suggest things to you like what medications to prescribe or what to do or when to call for help. So you are starting at the bottom of the ladder, and that's fine. That's what you're supposed to do. I've spent so much energy and time feeling frustrated for not knowing what to do, or for feeling that I should know more and I should be managing more. And it wastes so much of your energy, and it's not necessary. Learn what your job description is and do that well. That makes you a good junior doctor. It's not by trying and failing to be an SHO or a medical registrar. Your role as an F1 is to be the eyes on the ground. You are the glorified secretary, so to speak. Your job is to look after the patients, know when something is going wrong, keep your patients list, and we're going to talk about this later, keep it impeccable, know how to request investigations, make sure that the seniors are aware of the results. That's your job, and that's why I say glorified secretary, because a lot of it is going to be admin work and making sure that you keep the team aware of what's going on, because registrars and consultants are not going to be on the ward all the time, especially if you're doing like a surgical rotation. They're going to be in theatre most of the time or in clinics, and your job is to make sure that the ship is sailing in the right direction and everyone on board is safe. Don't waste your time trying to figure out how to cure everyone on the ship and what investigations to order. Yes, try and develop your critical thinking, and whilst you are on the job, you will inevitably learn how to manage sick patients. Especially on calls, you will develop independence for managing patients. But a big part of your job as a junior doctor is to make sure that you are on top of everything and you keep track of what's going on. So that's a big aspect of the job. So now that you've identified what the job description or role of a junior doctor is, you can now identify and start to develop the key points that make an amazing junior doctor. It's really not rocket science. I think the hardest bit is identifying what your role is and not trying to go above your station and doing something that's not expected of you. It can be unsafe for you to try and do something that you're not competent at yet. And that you haven't learned yet. So try and push yourself and learn new things and cross-check with seniors, but make sure you get your job as an F1 done first. So of course you get involved in the management of patients, of course you treat patients when they become unwell, but make sure you don't forget the foundation of what it is to be a junior doctor. It's called a foundation doctor for a reason. And you need to make sure you get the basis strong first before you build up on that. So that brings me on to my next point, which is to be organized. Now, that is one of the key qualities that a junior doctor, actually any doctor, can have. When you start working, you will realize that the most valuable thing that you own, aside from a black pen, is your patient's list. Now that is gold dust, and you want to make sure that you keep that as organized as possible. So a patient list is essentially a list of the patients that you're looking after, and you will have typically the patient details, their location, their blood tests, their working diagnosis, the management, and pending jobs for each patient. Typically, every morning, it's your job to update this list and make sure that you know which location your patient is in, because overnight they get moved all over the place, that you've got the updated bloods for this patient, and that you've got up-to-date jobs. This needs to be kept very organized because the seniors, like I said, won't be on the wards a lot of the time, and they won't remember all the patients that they're responsible for. So it's your job to collate all that information for them. As a junior doctor, if you notice a finding on a chest x-ray that's worrying, or if you find abnormalities in the blood tests, and you don't necessarily know how to address that or what's going on, that's okay. The whole point of you being here is to learn. You're a junior doctor in training. So you're not necessarily going to know how to manage an acute kidney injury when you start off, or how to correct electrolyte imbalances. What's important is that you bring those findings to the attention of your seniors, and that's when you start learning from them. By all means, if you can address it, then absolutely do. I'm not saying that you need to just delegate everything to your seniors and just not be proactive, but before being proactive, before getting to the point where you can manage patients, which you might already be at, make sure that you are keeping your team aware of what's going on and that you are their eyes and ears on the ground. One of my professors in medical school used to encourage me to auscultate as many chests as I could when I was going around on my hospital placements. And the reason for that is, if you can identify what normal is and you get used to that, as soon as something's off, you can pick it up. Even if you don't know what's wrong, even if you don't know what the murmur is, for example, you can identify what's not normal. And I think that's a very good place to start as a junior doctor. When you start working as a doctor, it can be very overwhelming because there's so much to learn. But if you can identify what's not normal, from blood tests to investigations like BBGs, ABGs, chest x-rays, if you can identify that, then you're already in very good stead because you've picked up the things that need to be addressed. And slowly you won't have to rely on giving that information to seniors and seeing how they act upon it. You will be able to act on it yourself. And that's the way that you learn in an efficient and proactive manner. On that same note, another part of being organized as a junior doctor is to document. That's going to be a big part of your day. On the ward rounds, typically it's the junior doctor that documents everything that's being said and what the management plan is. When there's a crash call or a news call, the junior doctor is usually the one that's going to be scribing what's being done, what's being given. So it's very important to make it a habit to document. If you haven't documented something, it hasn't happened. To give you an example, just yesterday I was on the wards and one of the nurses came up to me and told me that my patient's husband was very upset because he had been updated by the nurse over the telephone who had told him that his wife had bed sores. And this wasn't something new. She had actually come in from another hospital with bed sores, but nobody had actually mentioned it to him over the phone when they were giving him daily updates. He was outraged and felt that she hadn't been washed properly for days, and that's why she had gotten the bed sores. The nurse went through all the documentation to try and find out what had happened and if anything had been missed. And we ended up finding a clearly documented piece from when the patient had come in about her bed sores, which location they were on, and this was from the first day of admission. And she was able to reassure the husband with this, explaining that she herself had washed the patient several times, that she was being well looked after, that the bed sores were being addressed, but that it wasn't something new that had come up and that was missed by the healthcare staff. If that hadn't been documented, that would have been missed, and that meant that the nurse had something solid to back up what she was saying, and the husband was equally reassured because he felt that we were looking after his wife properly. Documentation is so important because in hospitals we're changing over all the time. There's different doctors on different shifts, nurses change over as well, so don't just assume that you'll remember or that the team that is around will know, because it might be a different team the next day. So make sure you document these things, especially things like conversations with 2 different consultants when you're on a ward round. Make sure you document that as part of the plan, and that's oftentimes your job as a junior doctor. I could go on for hours about how to be organized as a junior doctor, and if that's something you're interested in, just let me know in the comments down below. There's lots of things for like prepping notes for ward rounds and requesting bloods on time and that sort of thing. But you get the point. It's very important to be organized as a junior doctor, and it doesn't take somebody to be a genius to do that. It's just knowing that that's part of your job description and then just getting into the habit of doing it. And my third point is to look after yourself. And no, don't skip this because it's very important. Most doctors learn this the hard way. If you're going to be organised and get to work on time, you need to make sure that you leave on time. You need to make sure that you take your proper lunch breaks, not just munching in front of a computer screen doing a discharge letter. Take your proper break, make sure you leave on time. If you're stressed about something or you're not sure about the plan of a patient, speak to your seniors. If your mental health is suffering, if you've witnessed something very distressing, make sure you reach out and get the help that you need. It's not a privilege and it's not a selfish thing to do. It's your right, and I would argue that it's a selfless thing, because if you're looking after yourself, you're making sure that you're providing good quality of care for your patients and you're safe. Because when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're stressed, when you're demoralized, you're going to miss things and patient safety will suffer as a result. Because if you're tired or hungry or depressed or stressed, then you are going to miss things. It's inevitable. And the safety of your patients is going to be compromised. So do yourself a favour, do your patients a favour, and look after yourself. You're no longer in medical school where you can stay up a whole night before an exam and then suffer for a couple of days because you're recovering from what you've done to your body. You're not the only person at stake here, and you need to recognise that. It's a different game you're playing now, and you're not the only one at stake. And if at any point you are in doubt about anything, just ask. It's always better to check. Speak to the F2s around you. They know what you've been through. They did it last year. Everyone that you see, even the consultant, has gone through what you're going through. They weren't always as knowledgeable and as experienced as they are now. So be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and give yourself the time and care to develop into that amazing doctor that you want to be. And that in itself will make you an amazing junior doctor. I really hope this was helpful. If you have any questions at all or any specific videos you'd like me to make, let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.